Hi everyone, today we will talk about scientific workflow applications on Amazon EC2 paper. So in this paper we will talk about Amazon cloud, that how we will use that cloud for the scientific workflows. So let's start with the very first thing, that what is cloud computing. Cloud computing is an information technology paradigm that enables universal access to shared pool of configurable system resources and higher level services that can be rapidly provisioned with minimal management effort, or often over the internet. In this slide there is a definition of what is cloud computing. So it is a practice of using a network of remote server hosted on internet to store, manage and process data rather than a local server or a personal computer. So why do we require cloud computing? First of all, it provides on-demand resource provision. So this means that it provides access to the resources required by the user over the internet and allows the user to store, manage and process the data. Secondly, it provides an homogeneous network. It means it is comprised of computer network which user similar configuration and protocols. So with the configuration of the computer which uses the similar configuration and protocol is a homogeneous network. So cloud computing provides us that type of network. So thirdly, it is pay as you go service. This means that user can you have to pay for the amount of resources he uses and for how much time. Prices varies upon the requirement of the user using the resources. So this is all about that why we require cloud computing. Now there is a scientific application used. So why this cloud computing is used by the developers as a scientific application? Because many options when it comes to choosing a platform to run their applications. In the past, these options included local workstations, clusters, supercomputers, and grid. Each of these choices offer various trade-off in terms of usability, performance, and cost. And recently, like now, these cloud computing has emerged as another promising solution for scientific applications and is rapidly gaining interest in scientific community. So what are advantages of cloud computing? Cloud offers many technical and economical advantages over other platforms that are just beginning to be identified. They combine the customization of the virtual machines, the scalability and resources sharing of grids, and the stability and economic of the software as a service, that is known as SaaS. The use of visualization is particularly has been shown to provide many useful benefits for the scientific applications. So what are workflows? We are using workflow in every in every system when we are using cloud. So what are actually workflows? Workflows are the loosely coupled parallel applications that consist of a series of computational tasks connected by data and control flow dependency. Many scientific analyses are easily expressed as a workflows, and they are commonly used to solve problems in many disciplines. So these are like workflows. We have to before starting any application, we have to make a workflow that how much time it will take and how much cost effective it is, so that there is a planning of how we will move. Now clouds and workflows. Clouds provide several benefits for workflows application. So first one is illusion of infinite resources. So this is cloud gives us the illusion that the availability computing resources are unlimited. This means that the user can request and are likely to obtain sufficient resources at any given time. And lease? What is lease? Lease, like we are leasing, like renting out something. So user directly allocates resources as they require to schedule their computations. This model is an idea for workflows and other loosely coupled applications because decreases the scheduling overheads that can be significantly reduce their performance. So next comes the elasticity. Like it is very flexible, you can say that elasticity. So clouds allow user to acquire and release resources on demand. This enables workflow system to easily grow and shrink the available resources pool as the need of the workflow changes over time. So in this paper what they have talked about is that they are using existing commercial cloud, Amazon EC2, in order to access the potential of currently developed clouds. They require they require They analyze the cost of running the experiment on EC2 and compare the EC2 performance to a typical HPC system, NCA's AB cluster. This system, HPC system, is known. We are using is NCSA ABE cluster. So in this paper, the first one is as experimental study the contribution in this paper. So, as experimental study of the performance of three workflow within the different input-output, memory, and CPU requirements of a commercial cloud. Second one is a comparison of the performance of cloud resources and typically HPC resources. And third one is an analysis of the various costs associated with the running workflows on a commercial cloud. So this paper is focused on single multi-core node performance, which provide adequate capability for the applications we are evaluating in this paper. So in order to perform all these functions, they have used mainly three applications in order to evaluate the usefulness of the cloud computing for scientific workflows. The three different applications are an astronomy application, that is montage, seismological application, that is broadband, and the last one bioinformatic application, that is epigenomics. So what is in montage? Montage creates a science grade astronomical image mosaic using data collect from telescopes. So in broadband, they generate and compares the seismographs for several high and low frequency earthquakes, simulation codes. An epigenome is a map shot DNA segments collect using a high throughput gene sequencing machine to a previous constructed reference genomes using MAQ software. Here comes the application comparison of each one of the three applications, montage, broadband, and epinomics. So in this, what we are doing is in their experiment, they configured the montage workflow to generate 8-degree mosaic. The resulting workflow contains 10,429 tasks, reads 4.2 GB of input and produces 7.9 of output data. Montage is considered to be input output bound because it spends more than 95% of its time waiting on input output operations. So that's why the input output operations of montage is high. And let's go on to the broadband. In broadband you can see that memory is high. So why it is high, let's see. It's like in the experiment they used 4 sources and 5 sites to generate a workflow containing 320 tasks that reads 6 GB of input data and writes 160 MB of output data. Broadband is considered to be memory limited because more than 75 of its runtime is consumed by the task requiring more than 1 GB of physical memory. So that's for the broadband. Now let's move on to the epigenomics. So in this, the CPU is taking uh, the highest priority. So in this, why it is taking so is the workflow used in the experiment maps human DNA sequence to a reference chromosome 21. The workflow contains 81 tasks, reads 1.8 GB of input data, and produces 300 MB of output data. Epigenomics is considered to be CPU bound because it spends 99% of its runtime in CPU and only 1% on input output and other activities. So as they have used in the paper two types of execution environment, one is EC2 and one is NCSA's AB cluster. Amazon EC2 and NCAB clusters. EC2 is chosen because it is currently the most popular feature-rich and stable commercial cloud. ABE was chosen because it is a typically of the uh, existing HPC system. A scientist could choose to run their workflow application and is therefore a logical alternative to EC2. So as I told you that workflows are loosely coupled, parallel application that consist of set of computational tasks linked via data and control flow dependency. So that's why they have chosen these two environments to like we can easily compare. They have lots of competition between them. So these are the resources which are they have been using. So in this table, compare the resource type and use for the experiments. It lists 5 resources type from EC2. Sorry. Yeah. So M1 and like this M1 and EC1 star. Sorry, C1 star. And 2 resources typically from ABE, which are abe.local, abe.luster. There are several noteworthy details about the resources which are shown in this table. First, although there is actually only one type of ABE node, there are 2 types listed in the table, ABE local and luster. So the actual hardware used for these types is equivalent. The difference in how input is handled. So these 2 nodes represent that how the input is handled. The ABE.local type uses a local partition for input output and ABE luster type uses luster partition for input output. Using 2 different names is simply a notational convenience. So secondly, in terms of computational capacity, the this one C1X large resource type is roughly equivalent to the ABE local resource type with the expectation that ABE local has slightly more memory. We use this fact to estimate the visualization overhead for our test application on EC2. The third thing is for the resources is in rare cases EC2 assigns Xeon processor for M1 instance for all these 3 M1 instance, but for all the experiments reported here the M1 instance used were equipped with Operaton processor. The only significant is Xeon processor have better floating point performance than Opteron processor. And finally, the M1 small instance type is shown to have half core. This is possible because of the visualization. EC2 nodes are configured to give M1 small instance access to the processor only 50% of the time. This allows a single processor core to be shared equally between two separate and one small instances. So this is all about the table, and you can look at the core, the the CPU they are using, the architect, the how many bits they are using, and the memory for each of them, and network, yeah, and how the things are getting stored, and the of course the price. You can see that in ABE local and Lustre there is no price given. So the type of software, like the two things are using. So these two are the separate diagrams. Like this one is for execution environment of EC2, and this one is execution environment of ABE. So let's start. All workflows were planned and executed using the PEGNAS workflow management. Can you see here PEGNAS and PEGNAS? So all the workflows were planned to do that workflow management system with the DAGMAN. So there is a DAGMAN over here, and there is a DAGMAN over here, and Condor. This Condor, and here the Condor is, right? PEGNAS is used to transform its abstract workflow description into the concrete plans, which are then executed using DAGMAN to manage the task dependencies and Condor to manage the task execution. The software was developed on EC2 is shown over here. It Summit, a host running outside the cloud, was used to coordinate the workflow. So this is a host using the outside thing. So a summit of running outside the cloud was used to coordinate the workflow, and the worker nodes were started inside the cloud to execute the workflow task. Two virtual machines image were used to start worker nodes. You can see over here the worker nodes. Okay. So in in the second, this execution environment on EBE, the experiment globus and coral were used to deploy counter glidness as shown. The glidness start counter daemons on the EABE worker node, which contracted the summit host and were used to execute the workflow task. This approach created an execution environment on ABE that is equivalent to EC2 environment. So now let's talk about the storage, so how everything is getting stored. To run the workflow, we need to allocate storage for the four things, which is application executables, input data, and intermediate and output data. In the typical workflow application, executables are pre-installed on the execution side. Input data is copied from an archive to the execution side, and output data is copied from execution side to archive. For these experiments, executable and input data were pre-staged to execution site, and output data were not transferred from the execution site. So for Amazon EC2, executables were installed in virtual machine image. Intermediate and output data was written to local partition, and input data was stored on EBS volumes. And for ABE cluster, all applications, executable, and input files were stored in Lustre file system. That's all about the storage. Now storage for EC2, as I told you, so you can read from here, and storage for ABE. it's the same thing which I told you. So now comes to the performance of all the three applications which we are using, and these are the resources. So this shows the runtime of the selected application using the resource type as shown. So let's start this with the montage thing. The montage, the best EC2 performance was achieved by M1 X large, which is the yellow one. This likely due to the fact that MX large has twice as much memory as the next resource type. So the best overall performance for montage was achieved using the AVE cluster, which is true. This is RN1 configuration, which was the more than twice as fast as ABE local. Now in broadband, the best runtime for broadband was achieved by using ABE cluster resources type, and the best EC2 runtime was achieved by using C1X large resource type. So can you see the difference between these two? So broadband performance performed the worst on M1 small and C1 medium. M1 small and C1 medium is the green one, which also have the lowest amount of memory, that is of around 1.7 GB that we shown in the table. This is because M1 small has only half a core and C1 medium can only use one of its two cores because of the memory limitations. Let's come to epigenome. For epigenomics, the best EC2 runtime was achieved by using C1X large and this one, the dark blue one. The primary factor affecting the performance of epigenome was the availability of processor core with the more than core, resulting in lower runtime. This is expected given by epigenome is the most entirely CPU bound. So you can again see the performance by looking at the chart, the bar graph, so that you can compare. So now comes to the cost analysis. We consider three different cost categories. So the first one is resource cost. The second one will be the storage cost, and the third one will be the transfer cost. So we will talk about this like first we'll talk about resource, right? Then let me tell you what it is. So the resource cost includes charge of for the use of virtual machine instances in EC2. Store cost includes charge for keeping virtual machine images in S3 and input data in EBS. And the transfer cost includes charge for moving input data, output data, and log files between submit host and EC2. So let's go back to the resource cost. So what's the resource cost all about? Each of the 5 resource type in Amazon offers is charged at different rates hourly. The most cost effective instance was type was C1 medium. C1 medium, you can see in the bar graph. So C1 medium, which had the lowest execution cost for all the 3 applications. This one, right? So broadband, let's see that what you can see from the graph chart. The storage cost consists of excuse me. For this that broadband, you can see resource cost used again is for the C1 medium, and in this also you can see that C1 medium has a less resource cost, right? So in the storage cost, Storage cost consists of the cost of storage of VM images in S3, the cost of storing input data in the EBS. Both S3 and EBS use fixed monthly charges for the storage of data and variable using charges for accessing the data. So in this chart, there is a monthly cost and this volume and the size used by each application. Next comes the transfer cost. The table of the three applications which are shown. So in the table number, let me show you this. Just so in these two tables, shown the pre-workflow transfer size and the cost for three applications that are studied. Input in the amount of input data to the workflow output is the amount of output data, and logs is the amount of logging data that is recorded for workflow task and transferred back to the submit host. So you can see the table and see the input output and logs and the total amount which is spent. So what's come in the performance? In the performance, based on these experiments, the authors believe that the performance of the workflow on EC2 is reasonable given the resources that can be provisioned, although the EC2 performance was not as good as the performance of ABE. Most of the resources provided by EC2 are also less powerful. In the cases where the resources are similar, the performance was found to be comparable. In order to compete the performance-wise with the AAB for input-output intensive application, Amazon would need to deploy both a parallel file system and a high-speed interconnection. For the if we talk about memory-intensive application like broadband, EC2 can achieve nearly the same performance as ABE as long as there is more than 1 GB of memory per core. And if we take an example of CPU intensive application like Apne GNOME, EC2 can deliver comparable performance given equivalent resources. So virtualization does not seem by itself to be significant performance problem. Oh, for the cloud, so virtualization technology improves. It is likely that what little overhead there is will be future reduced for the elimination, right? And if we come to the conclusion, so the conclusion is that in the paper they found that the performance of EC2 was not equivalent to ABE in most of the cases. It was reasonable given the resources available. The primary advantage of AEB were found to be availability of a high-speed interconnection and the parallel file system, which significantly improved the performance of input-output intensive applications. Factoring out these advantages by running the additional ABE test using the local disk shows that the given equivalent resources, EC2 is capable of performing close to ABE. And they also analyzed that the cost of running workflows on EC2 are found that the primary cost in the acquiring resources to execute the workflow task and the storage costs were relatively small in comparison. The cost of data transfer, although is relatively high, can be effectively reduced by storing the data in the cloud rather than transferring for each of the workflow. So that's it in the paper. So we got to know that EC2 is lightly like uh, bit less in performance wise, it is less effective than ABE. And same with the cost. So that's all for this paper. Thank you.